Welcome to another of our anti-tank chats. Today we're going to be talking about a German anti-tank gun of World War II, Pak 35-36. This video has been made possible by our supporters on Patreon, our YouTube members and our super thanks donors. Please join them if you can and support the Tank Museum. And thanks for watching. Now, the German army during the First World War had become pretty adept at dealing with tanks using artillery. But as the potency of the tank as a weapon increases in the interwar period, it's widely realised that infantry need a method of combating tanks. Now, this could take a variety of form. The anti-tank rifle is one. Things like the British Boys, the Soviet PTR-D41. But the other alternative is an anti-tank gun, something small enough to be used in the front line, manhandled about to where it's needed by the infantry themselves. The Pak 35-36 is a 3.7 centimetre weapon. It weighs roughly 432 kilograms, and as you can see, it's got a split steel trail and a gun shield to protect the crew from small arms fire. It's a fellow traveller in lots of ways with other anti-tank guns of the period, things like the British 2-pounder and the French 2.5 centimetre. Now, the spec for this actually comes out as early as 1925, and that is for a 3.7 centimetre gun that will penetrate up to 40 millimetres of armour at 500 metres. It's developed in conditions of secrecy because Germany at that point is still bound by the terms of the Treaty of Versailles. As originally conceived, it's a horse-drawn weapon with spoked wooden wheels, because most armies were still relying to a greater or lesser extent on horse-drawn transport. But with increasing mechanisation, German army realises they've got to tow these things about behind motor vehicles. So the spoked wheels go and they're replaced by magnesium alloy disc wheels with pneumatic tyres. And at that point, the name changes to Pak 35-36. The same weapon as the KWK 36L45 was also used as the main armament of the early marks of Panzer III until they were upgunned. And this is similar to the British use of the 2-pounder in tanks like Matilda II. So here is the weapon in its firing position with the trail deployed, and on the end of the trail legs there are the recoil spades. You can see the weapon itself is, compared to other anti-tank weapons, it's actually quite small and quite low to the ground. And that's a positive advantage in terms of camming it up, concealing it in an ambush situation. Served by a crew of 5, have the commander, gunner, loader, and then 2 ammunition carriers. Moving up to the gunner's position, I'm going to sit down on the trail as he would have done, and I'm going to talk you through what happens at this end. So the first thing to do is to fit the sight, the gun sight. It's a fairly simple optical sight. It goes on these rails here. It's a little bit of a fiddle to get on. So that's the sight installed, and you then need to open the steel shutter in the gun shield. So that is the gun ready for firing. Coming back around in this direction, looking at the loader's controls, you have elevation and traverse wheels. Now, the traverse wheel, you've got about 30 degrees left and right traverse, and elevation, which is this one, -5 to +25 degrees, and that's quite sufficient for an anti-tank gun of this type. If it comes to it, the crew can actually just pull it round a little bit further for targeting. There is the lever here to open the breech, and then this button, that is actually one of the 2 triggers. The other trigger is a lever down on this side. To deal with recoil, there's a buffer and recuperator, and that operates by compressing oil, and also there's a return spring. And then moving round to the rear of the weapon, the end of the leg, there's recoil spade,
and also a handle. And you can see it's a really very easy to move the weapon around. And then finally, right at the back, is the towing eye. The original Panzergranate 18 round would penetrate up to 34mm 30-degree sloped armour at 1,000 metres, or 40mm at 100 metres, though that is getting extremely close. Around 20,000 Pak-36s were produced. This makes the weapon the standard anti-tank weapon, German Army and the Waffen-SS, the opening stage of the war. And a lot of these guns stay in service until 1945. Pak-36 first saw combat, along with a lot of other German equipment, as part of the Condor Legion in 1936 in the Spanish Civil War. Apart from supporting the nationalist forces, the Spanish Civil War was a testing ground for a great deal of equipment, and the Pak-36 performed very well. It was easily capable of dealing with the lightly armoured Soviet tanks like the BT-5 and the T-26. Likewise, in the 1939 invasion of Poland, the Pak-36 was able to knock out Polish armour like the 7TP, but it's in France in 1940 that it seriously starts to underperform. French tanks like the massive Char B-1 and the British Matilda II were able to survive multiple hits from the Pak-36 without being penetrated, and the gun gets a nickname, the Heeresanklopfgerat, the army door knocker. With the opening of Operation Barbarossa, the invasion of the Soviet Union in 1941, the Pak was still useful against the majority of outdated tanks that make up the bulk of Soviet armour, but it fails against heavy tanks like the KV-1 and, more importantly, is unable to take on the increasing number of T-34s. An improved tungsten cord APCR round, armour-piercing composite rigid, the Panzergranate 41, did improve things a little bit. It gives you up to 64mm of penetration at 100 metres, but it's still not very effective at the longer ranges. And I'm afraid it's getting to the stage where all the Pak-36 does is bounce rounds off the T-34 unless they're able to manage a side or a rear hit. By the outbreak of war, September 1939, 11,200 Pak-35-36s had been produced, but by late 1940 it's being gradually replaced by the 5cm Pak-38, and by the end of 1941 by the 7.5cm Pak-40. Surplus Pak-36s also passed on to German allies on the Eastern Front, particularly the Romanian 3rd and 4th Armies. During Operation Uranus, Marshal Zhukov's plan to encircle the German 6th Army in Stalingrad, this proves disastrous because Soviet armoured forces are able to smash through the Romanian opposition, in part due to a lack of effective anti-tank weapons. A number of the remaining Pak-36s were mounted, minus trails, on SDKFZ 251 half-tracks as light anti-arm support weapons. In addition to this, certain units such as Fallschirmjäger did retain them due to light weight and mobility. Some attempts were also made to mount Pak-36s on the abundance of captured vehicles, such as the French Chenilette and British Universal carriers. I can't imagine these would be at all effective because the crews would be terribly exposed and the vehicles themselves are just appallingly tall in profile. In an attempt to restore some of the Pak-36's anti-tank capability, this was devised. This is the Steelgranate 41. Now what this is a hollow charge weapon, actually slots onto the end of the gun's muzzle, and it's fired with a blank cartridge. The projectile is fin stabilised, as you can see, and it contains a 2.45 kilogram shaped charge warhead, and that will penetrate up to 180 millimetres of armour. With a velocity of 110 metres a second, this has got a theoretical range of up to 800 metres. And in fact, it's so inaccurate that anything beyond 200 to 300 metres is really pretty optimistic. As I've already said, Pak-35-36 is very much a fellow traveller with weapons like the British 2-pounder and the American 37mm. Unlike them, it carries on in frontline service right the way through till 1945. and that has got a lot to do with Germany's shortage of materials and the ability to actually replace this weapon. The Stielgranate 41 was an ingenious but imperfect way of prolonging the weapon's frontline service use. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe, and if you can, please support us on Patreon.